The 5 ways to avoid being sued while wholesaling real estate. Guys, it's Rick Ginn, and this video, I'm going to break down the 5 things you have to understand to avoid any type of lawsuit, especially in wholesaling. And if you stay with me to the end, I'm going to let you know the ultimate secret, so hopefully you never get sued. But before I get into it, do me a favor, make sure you smash that like button. Yes, that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe notification button so you can continue to receive the most up-to-date videos on wholesaling today. So I know you're probably not even thinking about being sued possibly in wholesaling real estate. And honestly, if you do this long enough, you have to understand anybody can sue you for anything. It doesn't matter. The way the U.S. law system set up, in my opinion, is absolutely nuts. So if somebody sues you because they think the sky is red and you say it's blue, you can enter into a lawsuit. And if you do not respond, you lose. Now, I know that's a facetious, crazy scenario I do, but that's how it seems to work. And I've been sued a lot. I've been doing this 21 years. Most of the lawsuits are just ridiculous. So what I'm going to do is walk through the 5 steps that I've learned from my wholesaling experience so you can avoid some of the painful things that I went through in a lawsuit. So you can not completely avoid a lawsuit, but understand you can mitigate it if you follow these 5 rules. Now, before I get into it, I am not giving you legal advice and I am not a licensed lawyer. So my recommendation is always consult with a real estate attorney. That's the best way to first and foremost to avoid a lawsuit. Now, let me walk through my 21 years experience. So most lawsuits are a result for one major factor. You ready? Somebody got upset because you didn't meet their expectations. That is it. Honestly, the only time I've ever been sued mostly is because someone gets really upset. And if you know that going into it, how do we avoid people getting upset? Number 1, you have to have a clear expectation. So rule number 1, just tell the truth. It's easier. It's painful up front. It's a difficult, awkward, uncomfortable conversation. But the more you get it laid out so you can lay out a contract, the less chance of someone getting disappointed or not meeting an expectation. Of all the people that have ever sued me, it's the ones that had the biggest misunderstanding. And part of that was on me and a lot of it was on them. So the easiest way to clarify is just be brutally honest. If you know there is a pending issue on a property, just get it out of the way. The sooner you get it out of the way, the better your chances of actually doing a deal or saving a deal. If you just tell the truth, everything's transparent, it's just easier. Most of the people I've had to deal with a litigious situation is they've hid the truth or tried to hide the material facts. So for you to avoid this, just tell the truth as you see it. And what I've learned with the truth is only what the facts represent at the time of that decision. Let me repeat that. The truth is a representation of the facts at the time you made the decision. As long as those facts are consistent, then people can have a fair expectation on both sides. If one party holds back, that's when expectations aren't met. And that's when people go and hire lawyers and sue you. So just tell the truth, guys. I know it sounds simple, but if you do it, you don't have to worry about your other party because if they don't tell the truth, you can hold them accountable. But most people will try to nail you if you don't tell the truth and you try to skip it out in writing. That's where most lawsuits derive from. The second tip to avoid any type of lawsuit is just disclosure, disclosure, disclosure. Now, most of you aren't licensed real estate agents, brokers, or attorneys, and they have all sorts of licenses. The reality in wholesaling is we don't have a license. And the truth is, I can't stop bad wholesalers from doing bad things. If they have bad intentions and they're a bad person, if they were a teacher, they probably do bad things. If they were an airline pilot, they do bad things, and so on. So we don't have a license in wholesaling, so you have to govern yourself accordingly. The best way to do it, full disclosure. So many of you try to hide the fact that you're trying to make a profit from buying this house and selling the contract. If you're just transparent up front and say, listen, I'm doing this for a profit, most sellers really don't care. When you hide it and you purposely try to go around it, when the property goes up for sale and their neighbor leans in the air or the realtor leans in the air, that's when the problems come out and they're like, you never told me that. Honestly, if you just tell them up front, it gives you full disclosure and you won't have that weird confrontation at the end when you sell the property. Honestly, the reality is they know you're buying the property to make a profit, so just disclose it up front. Not only do you disclose it, you put it in writing, and you cover yourself on both sides of the transaction, if you try to materially hide these facts, it creates problems. Listen, if you're doing an assignment, just let them know. Sometimes I bring other partners in and I sell my interest in the contract over to them. I just want to make sure that's okay with you. Sometimes I close on a different company's name. That's giving transparency and disclosure. So when it's different on the HUD, you don't have that awkward confrontation. So many of you guys fear telling the truth up front. And honestly, if you do it early and quickly, it's rarely an issue. When you try to dump it at the very end, people get upset, and upset people tend to sue. So the last thing we ever want to upset is the seller. So full disclosure, full truth telling up front is just easier. And honestly, that's when you're going to have the least amount of resistance. Wait till the end. You could easily wind up in a lawsuit. Number 3, I know this is going to sound basic, but I got to repeat it. Your sellers mostly hold you accountable for what you verbally say. We have to put it in writing to get their consent and make it legal. You have to make sure the writing matches up to your verbal agreement, and you have to repeat it and clarify it. And listen, I would love to have every agreement just verbally, but the reality is we're in a world where you have to put it in writing. So make sure your verbal agreement is written out word for word the way it needs to be, and make sure you repeat it back to them so your verbal matches what you have in writing. Because at the end of the day, when you're at the closing table, most sellers say, hey, Rick, you said this. And if you don't have that in contract, you can create animosity with your cash buyer, with your title company, and all parties involved. And for that reason, make sure you have everything in writing and make sure it matches up to the word you told your seller, because I still believe at the end of the day, sellers are going to hold you most accountable for your word. So make sure it matches your contract in writing. Number 4, I got to say this one out loud. Make sure you separate your personal life from your business life, because when you cross blend and cross-pollinate them, you can create problems. Now, in the beginning, if you do a deal or two on your name because you just got started, like no big deal. But if you're going to be serious about wholesaling, it's imperative you set up your own corporation. Now, I'm not here to give you legal advice, but consult a real estate attorney, consult your CPA, and find out the business structure that most suits your life. Remember, we're all different. We all have different income levels. We all have different assets. I can't tell you one size fits all. Can tell you this. You need to set up a corporation. I don't care if it's an Inc., an LLC. We can talk about S Corps, C Corps, but you have to have separation, because in the event you get sued, if you're buying everything in your personal name, you can risk everything you own and risk your family's financial future. For that reason alone, make sure you run your wholesaling business and you separate it from you personally, meaning you have a separate checking account, you have a separate operating agreement, and you do not cross and commingle any of it. See, if there's clear division and they want to sue your corporation, they sue your corporation, they don't sue you personally. If you don't have that clear division, they're going to assume you're in charge of everything and they're going to sue you personally, and that's going to put you at massive risk. So take your business seriously. If you got to do a deal or two under your name, that's okay. But if you're going to be in this business the long run, please separate and open up your own corporation so you do not risk you and your family's assets in the event someone sues you for a reckless event. Make sure you are protecting yourself. Go seek and get legal advice, a real estate attorney and a CPA to give you instructions, because remember, we're all different and it's not responsible for me to give you a one size fits all. We all operate a little bit differently, so go get the help, but make sure you have that clear-cut division. Number 5, which is really my favorite, and unfortunately, I learned this somewhat the hard way. And this is a rule that if you just follow this one, still 1 through 4, make sure you do and you understand. But number 5 is a good one. Think and act on every deal you do in wholesaling as if you had to present it to a judge. Why? Because in the event you get sued and you actually have to press forward with the lawsuit, you have to go through depositions and all this stuff. Eventually, you wind up in front of lawyers and judges are infamous for, they want to find out one thing. What was your true intent in this transaction? And if you can tell a story of the truth of the material facts that happen, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be fine. But if you try to hide and you try to manipulate, you're going to look terrible in the eyes of the court of law, especially the judge. Depends. Sometimes the judge makes decisions. Sometimes it's a jury. It depends on what type of agreement you have. You have to understand that. If you understand that, it will help you avoid mistakes. So if you're doing a questionable transaction, go listen. If a judge was standing right here, would he understand what my intent is? And if they wouldn't, I would get clarity on it before you go any further on it. And I've sat in front of judges and they ask me that exact question and it's burnt in my brain. So if I wouldn't clear it with a judge, why do I think it's good to move forward with this? You can risk a lawsuit by doing it. So by having clarity and acting as if you're always in front of a judge, it will help you, give you guidance on transactions. Listen, sometimes we come across some really questionable transactions in real estate. People want you to do this and bend rules and understand. If I got to stand in front of a judge or a jury, a symbolism of the peers in my groups, what would they think of this? And if you think outside of your own self, because sometimes we let money overtake the decisions we make, think in a third party, especially a judge, and it will usually guide you in the right direction. This has saved me of many times when I was much more immature. Then when I got sat in front of a judge and it cost me a lot of money, I go, I'm not going to make a mistake. I'm going to think like a judge whenever I make a legal decision. So let me leave you with this last tip. I want you to understand when you're dealing with difficult people in real estate, especially wholesaling real estate, and they're difficult up front, maybe they're a seller, maybe they're a buyer, they only get worse from there. You're getting their best impression. So if they're difficult and they're making your life terrible, remember in real estate, we always have the choice who to work with. I choose not to work with those people because they usually wind up in a real major headache and often a lawsuit. So the best way to avoid that is just avoid difficult people at all costs because they like to use lawyers to try to manipulate and pinch you to get what they want. And I don't like doing business that way. There is a large percent of the population that does that. When these people come across your network, get rid of them. And honestly, you're going to save yourself a ton of aggravation, and you got to understand that. So guys, remember, at the end of the day, you need to consult a real estate attorney. And I would also seek the advice of a CPA so you can mitigate the chance of you being sued. And remember, always think like you're a judge, and it will help you steer you in the right direction, looking at it from that third party looking above. So guys, if you enjoyed this video, do me a favor, make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe notification button to continue to receive up-to-date videos on wholesaling to date. So guys, I appreciate your time. This is Ginn, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.